The title of this next talk is Don't Be Scared, Why Teens Should Watch Horror Movies. Please welcome Nick Garwick.
The Shining is one of the most famous horror movies of all time and is a staple in the horror film community due to its glorious adaptation of the book that leaves the movie spine-chilling. Some people, though it is a horror movie containing graphic violence, such as the slashed bodies of two young girls, it is well-renowned and respected by all. Some people say horror movies are the worst genre of movies, as it supposedly corrupts the youth. So what is the principle that guides teens to watch these movies? Although some people believe that horror movies have a bad influence on teens, I argue quite the opposite, because it can help teens deal with bad experiences and emotions through catharsis, and it grants psychological benefits. Let us start with the definition of horror. Horror is challenging to define, but can be described as a feeling of intense fear or disgust. Though there are many genres of horror movies, such as a slasher horror movie or psychological horror movie, it can be classified as a particular category of movies that invoke fear into the audience in order to captivate them. Horror also has a tendency to transform our fears into metaphors. Enlightening us of the real problems in our society. One of the ways horror movies captures the attention of the audience is through the usage of what Aristotle calls catharsis. Writing about tragedies and poetics, Aristotle talks about how catharsis is the perfect way to tell a tragedy. A good tragedy requires a surplus of irony, such as the audience knowing that catastrophe is about to strike, which is unknown to the character. This forms a bond between the audience and the character, subsequently building up tensions, anger, and fear. When the best happens to the character, the audience is relieved, purging the negative feeling. The catharsis argument needs to first invoke pity and fear into its viewers in order for it to be effective. As Joe Sachs, a professor of literature at the St. John's University, writes, in the first sense of purgation, the horror movie acts as a kind of medicine, doing its job and leaving the soul healthier. Catharsis also helps the viewers process the ghastly images that have happened on screen and purge any negative feeling that they may be feeling at the end of the movie. Another benefit of watching horror movies is that it grants psychological benefits, such as the dopamine effect. Dopamine is a chemical release inside the brain that promotes joy and focus. Though the dopamine effect is in many movies, it is particularly common in horror movies because there's a constant struggle between life and death. In turn, experiencing horror movies with a friend unites and solidifies a bond between the viewers as they have survived together. Additionally, the viewers might experience a sense of pure bliss as they have managed to bear the horrific images that have happened on screen. The surge of bliss the viewers receive from the dopamine effect is similar to that of the relief of catharsis, which further solidifies the reason why teens should watch horror movies. Some say teens should not watch horror movies because many people, like children, will be negatively affected by them. They believe children cannot handle the images that have happened on screen and will inevitably experience nightmares, which can lead to a loss of sleep or even a loss of appetite. I agree that children under the age of 13 should not watch horror movies. However, I argue that children above the age of 13 should watch horror movies. See, at the age of 13, children turn to teenagers and begin a new phase in their brain development, turning that from an innocent child into an experienced adult. As John Bensat, a professor of innovation and entrepreneurship at the University of Exeter, writes, the prefrontal cortex is the decision-making part of the brain and is responsible for the child's ability to plan and think about consequences of actions, solve problems, and control impulses. This is another reason why teens should watch horror movies. At first glance, horror movies seem to offer little positive contribution. But in reality, horror movies have a deep, rich interior that is clouded by a bloody and gory exterior. If teenagers watch horror movies properly and ignore the terror and violence, they will reap the benefits of watching them. Horror movies can be a tool to help teens deal with traumatic events in their lives through the uses of catharsis, or even give benefits with watching with a friend. So why should teenagers watch such movies like The Shining? So that they can reap the benefits of watching such misunderstood movies. Thank you.